want to talk to you guys about masks. Like, where y'all going? No, not these kind of masks. I don't know how many of you guys have been using masks in your video edits, but I did put up a post the other week talking about masks, and then everybody jumped in and started saying, yeah, when it comes to using masks in my video editing software, it's one of those things I don't think a lot of people are back and forth on whether they use them or how to use them, and I get a lot of questions about using masks and masking techniques, so I figured we'd take a minute here to talk about exactly that. Friends in the chat. There we go. Canfly Washington. Good to see you. Doug Houston. Always a pleasure. Jessica Compton. Hello, my friend Iggy. This bite's for you. Good to see you, my friend. Let me turn stuff off. I got so many things going on today. So, listen, let me ask you guys right off the bat. In the chat, tell me, how many of you as video editors are using masks or masking techniques typically in your video editing? Just give me a yes or a no. Yes if it's something that you tend to use frequently, or no if it's something you don't use all that much. Just get a feeling for how many of you out there are actually using the feature to begin with. How you doing, Feel Button? Good to see you. Good to see you too, Jacker Crackers. Great name, Jacker Crackers. I love that name. Let's see. Iggy says no, doesn't really use it. Tech Deo says yes, uses it. Stephen Walter says I used a mask in next week's short. Excellent. Fantastic. And let's see. Vagabond Sachin says no. No. How are you, sir? I'm doing really well. Gervanch, hope I said that right. Good to see you. So let me think about this for a second. Do you guys, let me ask you one other question. How many of you want to use masks and just don't really understand how to use them effectively? Just like, well, it's kind of confusing how to use it, and I don't really know where I would use them. Tell me if it is confusing. Use any lingo you want in the chat to tell me that you'd like to be using them, but maybe it's just a little confusing. Because I think that's where a lot of people really start having issues is they think like, boy, I'd like to use this, but like when to use it effectively, where so it makes sense. Iggy says, yeah, confusing. Yes, me. I want to use it, but I don't know how. Perfect. Okay. Confused when to use it. That's awesome. It's not awesome that you're confused. It's awesome that you want to learn the techniques. So let me talk about that for a second. When we're talking about masks, let me see if I can explain this in the simplest of terms. Masks, at their source, are basically taking a piece of footage and masking around an area that you either want to display or remove from that piece of footage or asset in your timeline. I can probably show you a better example of that. Give me 1 second here. Let's do this. Let me add this up here. So here's just a piece of video editing software. Boy, I have too many things on right now. Look at all the branding I have. 9 million pieces of branding. If you had a wall, right, and you wanted to paint like a circle on this wall somewhere, right, you might take out masking tape, right, and mask around where you were going to paint so you could get nice clean lines. Because if you just walked up and started dropping paint on this wall, the whole thing would turn white. Right, it'd just be a big white wall. And you're like, wait a minute, nope, that's not what I wanted. I just want like a circle. So like in a photo editing software, to create that sort of masking tape effect to figure out where you want the paint to go, you'd actually put a mask or a tool, like you can barely see this, but this is basically a circle. I don't know if you can see it spinning around, but there's a circle mask that I put on here. So now when I add the color, it's only going to go in that circle. Now you can see the circle, right? So I created a mask that said, this area is important in this layer, just do it here, and leave the rest transparent. I don't want the rest. I want to be able to see the background, but on this next layer, I just want this much, not the whole screen. So that's kind of what we're doing when we talk about masking in a video editing project. When you build a video editing project, it's layers, and you know that every layer that's literally higher in your timeline it's almost like it's three-dimensional. Flip it forward you. Whatever is physically on top in your timeline is the most forward layer. So if you had one layer of footage, then on top of that you had a text track, that would be the text overlay. So that would be on top of it. So if you're looking at it, you'd see the text with the video in the background, and every layer on top works that way. But sometimes you'll have entire pieces of footage that take up the whole screen, and you say, well, I only want to have a piece of this show through. And some people will try to crop it and shrink it and do all that. But to try to get shapes and do different masking techniques of, well, I only want that portion. It's not like a just shrinking and I just want a piece of that. That's when masks come in handy. And you can literally start masking out whatever you don't want in that piece of footage and then leaving in what you do. Now, there's a million ways to do this, and I've covered so many of them on my channel personally. I've done ones where I've done more adaptive masks where I literally took a piece of footage of some people at the beach, and I changed the whole skyline. Oh, let me show you what I'm talking about there. Let me find that for you.
Want to learn how to remove the sky in your project and replace it in Filmora 9? Stick around. I'll show you how. Hit the subscribe button and click the notification.
So all I did there was, in that particular situation, was there was a set horizon line, and all that blue sky, I just made a mask, I erased it, and then I put another piece of footage behind it that was just like, you know, a bunch of fireworks going off. So it looked like and I changed the color grading. So it looked like people were at the beach and they were watching fireworks in the sky. So that's just a really simple example of a mask. Some of you recently may have seen, I did a video where I turned myself like into the Pong ball in like the Atari Pong game, but I only wanted my face. I only wanted like my face to be a circle. So I masked, even though I shot myself right here in this set, I masked around my face so that I would have a circle of my face. And I made myself look like the Pong ball, kind of. Kind of. So the idea is that's what, when we're saying masking, we're literally saying, let's take a piece of footage, let's take a selective part of that, and let's see if we can erase around the stuff we don't want and leave in what we do. Now, I know a lot of you guys are like me and you use Filmora video editor. That tends to be my go-to. It's not the only software I use, but a lot of the people who come here to this community tend to use it quite frequently. And they recently have changed their masking setup a bit. They used to have a preset amount of masks that you could kind of work with, and they kind of worked. And they recently did an update where they still have the old set of masks, but now they have introduced another set of masks, which are a little more user-friendly. So I figure I'd take a minute to show you how to use those so we can explain how to use masks and also learn a little bit more about the new feature for the Filmora users out there. I do want to take a second to thank the wonderful sponsors who allow us to do this stream every week.
This live stream is sponsored in part by StreamYard, live streaming made simple, and by Spreadshop, the #1 resource for all of your print-on-demand needs.
So if you do want to make live streams that look like this, please be sure to check out StreamYard, links in the description. Or if you want to start making your own cool merch, just like a t-shirt like this, and start either wearing it yourself or selling it on your channel, check out the Spreadshop link that I have down below. Both are free to start using. Definitely check them out. I recommend looking at them. So let me pull up Filmora. So this is Filmora. This is the newest version. Iggy could tell you the exact numbers because he's always way ahead of the number. I've got 11.4.2. They just brought this one out the other day. Filmora is notorious for a lot of updates because, to be honest, a lot of the software comes out has like a glitch that they find and they have to fix it, and then they find a new glitch and they have to update and put a new fix. So they're constantly doing glitch fixes to try to make the software run smoother and faster. Because all these new features that they keep adding means that it requires more system resources. So there's always something going on that they're tweaking. But in this new project, let me get my face out of here. If you were to get a piece of footage, let me go over to the sample videos. And we'll go with the guy on the bike. It's always the guy on the bike we end up grabbing. And let's put that down in the timeline. So here's the guy on the bike, right? And let's say we wanted to apply a mask. First of all, let's do this. I'm going to raise that up one spot in the timeline. I just raised it up so it put it into a second track. So now I have two tracks and the first track is empty. That's one of the things you can do in Filmora. Instead of going through the process of hitting the track manager and adding a track, you can literally grab a piece of footage, lift it up, and it'll put it into a new track and create that track. So there I have three. So I just opened up the #1 track. Now in the #1 track below it, let's just take something else, whatever that might be. It can be anything. How about cherry blossoms? Does that work? Sure. So as you can see, because I have this footage in the top, number 2 track completely full frame, it's blocking everything below it. And if I turn off the guy on the bike, you now see the cherry blossoms, right? You now see that piece of footage down below it. And if I turn it back on, then it completely blocks it. So let me make these the same length. I'm going to get rid of the extra here. So now I have these 2 pieces of footage that are, you know, the same length, but this is blocking that. So let's say that I only wanted to show the guy's face for some reason. Well, Filmora has a new feature that's pretty cool. If you click on this in your timeline, anything you click in your timeline, it typically opens up another set of controls up in this upper left. So when you look in the upper left, you see it's automatically defaults to the basic tab, but they've added the mask tab, which is new, more interactive masks. Now, it's set for none, right? Right now it's set for none. You could say, well, I would like to make a circle. So I'm going to grab the circle mask, okay? And all I do is click it, and it immediately applies a mask. Can you see where the circle, it defaulted to kind of an egg-shaped right in the center, so it masked out everything around that shape. So in that top footage, everything, the only thing you can see is what's inside of the circle, okay? Just what's inside of the circle. So that's our mask. Does that make sense so far? I have 2 tracks. I put a mask on the top and it's a circle, and it said, okay, we're only gonna make the whatever is inside of the circle visible to for this track. I feel like Mr. Beast. Whatever's inside of the circle, you can have. So that's the kind of so that's the basic idea of a mask. Think of it like masking tape. You put tape around it, and only the stuff inside of the circle of tape that you made is the stuff that's going to get the paint, or it's going to show. Everything else below it is protected. Okay. So in that protection layer, there's some other stuff that you can do. Let me get rid of my branding so it's not blocking it. If I turn off the track below, you'll just see a basic black background. It's a little easier to see how the mask is working if I turn off the other track. But let's do this. Let's make this more of a circle. I'm going to get my face out of the picture here. I'm going to make this more circle-esque. This is something that was harder to do before in Filmora. You used to have to use all of these scale and width and use these to pull it and stretch it and shape it. But now they've got this new feature here where if you use it right from the mask tab, you can actually stretch and skew and move this all by yourself with just grabbing it on screen. So you could say, all right, why don't I do this? I just want to show his face. Now I'm right at the beginning of the footage here. See where my playhead is? I've just adjusted, I added the mask just by clicking the circle. I activated the track, clicked the mask tab, put the circle, done. I moved it over his face. Are we clear so far? Is everybody, let me know in the chat. Can you understand what I did? A simple mask, just covered his face right now. If that makes sense, tell me yes, exactly, Stephen Walters. No more XY. There is the XY. It's still there so you can slightly tweak it, but the new feature allows you to just kind of grab it and move it around, which is much better than it used to be. It still has not as many masks in this as it did in the old mask, but they still have the old masking feature too. So far, so good. Cool. Yes, you get it. Let me see. Have to animate that mask, I bet. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because this guy's probably going to move. And this is one of the cool things, Smaz, that the new Filmora feature allows you to do. So if we're back inside of Filmora here, let's say I scroll forward, right? And I go up to about here and I go, the guy's face is the mask stayed still, but the guy's face in the footage, it moved. So what you can do here is this is another trick I was talking about in the last few weeks, keyframing. Go back to the beginning of your footage and right where you start. So you go, okay, that's the circle at the beginning of the footage is right where I want it. The playhead is at the beginning of the footage. And if you look, they've added the keyframe feature. So the first thing we want to do is lock that circle in place. So we'll just click add. And if you can see down in the right where the playhead is, a little green dot has been added on that piece of footage in the timeline saying, at this point, this is the size and shape of the mask we want here. Now we move forward. We go, oh man, now the guy's, he's moved. That's no problem. Leave the playhead there. And if we click on the mask up in the preview window, let's just move it back over his face. Let's go, okay, how about right about there? Perfect. Now what happened is that just keyframed to follow him. because the software fills in the blanks. We told the mask where to be here, and we told it where to be here. Now it's keyframed the motion in between. And you can do this really simply, move forward a little bit more and go, wait, he moved again. Let me move that back. Okay, right at about that spot. And let's go a little bit forward. Wait, he's moved again. Now he's over here. But wait a minute, he's getting closer to the camera. Now we got a problem. Now his face is too big for the mask. Can you see what's going on here? It's like, oh man, it's like I had his whole face in it. Now it's kind of squashing in. This is one of the cool updates that Filmora has. It's the same idea when we're thinking about using masks. What you can do is just go, okay, well, I'll just grab the mask and I'll make it a little bigger and I'll adjust it and go, okay, right about there. Now it kind of covers his whole face. Now I got his face and a bit of his helmet back in. And if you notice between the previous keyframe and this keyframe, not only did it move the mask, but it expanded the mask. See, it makes the mask bigger. Smaller here and then bigger here. Now you can move forward and do the same thing again and say, all right, hang on. I need this mask. I'm going to click up in the window for the mask. I'm going to move it again to get it over his face. Let's get it. Here he goes out of frame. The dude's kind of gone at that point. Let's see. I think he's pretty much out of frame. And then if there's anything in the middle that looks like we lost tracking, there, just scrub the playhead to where it looks like it's a little out of tracking, and then just stop the playhead there, click on the key for the mask up in the upper right preview window, and then just slide it into place. And it'll do that minute adjustment to stay kind of more on him. And then when we go through, if you watch in the upper right, now that mask will kind of just follow him in and out of frame. And you can tweak that. You can get that to be more specific. But if you look now we've got that following him, right? Kind of, we would tweak that, make it a little bit better. But if we turn the background footage on again, let me turn the background. Hold on, let me get my face out of here. In the lower left, if you see, there's that little, in any one of these tracks that starts with a lock button that you can lock to make sure that nothing gets changed in the track. You can mute or unmute the track. Or you can display the track or turn it off. That's what the eyeball is. So we'll turn the track on, and now when we play it, we've got little bouncing face with the background track still showing through because we've masked everything else out except for that bike rider's face, and everything else is now gone, right? So does that make sense? Did you see what we just did there? Pretty simple. That new feature that you can just grab a mask. You can pick your shape. Is it a circle you need? A star? Do you need none whatsoever? You can turn it off. There's double lines and single lines where you can squash, which side. This is one of the things we do a lot when we're doing like the cloning effect. If you want to talk to yourself in a video, I did a whole video on that where I basically set up a camera and I sat to one side and filmed myself. And then I went to the other side and filmed myself on the other side. And then I just laid those two tracks on top of each other and put a mask halfway down the middle of one. So the background looked the same and it looked like me talking to the other, but it was really half of one frame and half of another frame. It just so happens I never moved the camera, so it looked like all the background was the same and it made it feel like I was in the same room. Pretty straightforward. What do we got here? iCast Enterprise, good to see you, my friend. I so enjoyed Daniel's simple and to the point style of teaching. Yeah, I think sometimes what happens here, iCast, is some of these features can be overwhelming. I think video editing in and of itself can be overwhelming just because there's so many things you have to learn. So my technique is always, listen, if you can understand what each thing does, if you learn these simple techniques along the way, then when you run into a problem later on, what you can do is you can figure out which technique might help you overcome that hurdle. I did that same thing. Like I wanted to put myself in the Atari Pong game and I was bouncing my face back and forth. And I was like, okay, what do I need to do? I need a mask, right? I got to get masked around. And then I'm gonna have to keyframe it because my face was center on screen. So I needed to keyframe the whole footage. So I was just taking things that I knew, basic keyframing, basic masking techniques. And I was able to create that Pong effect of bouncing myself back and forth just by knowing in my head, I've never seen anyone do it. I just said, well, I want to create this. So what do I think, what features, tools, and techniques do I have to implement to create the effect on screen that I wanted to do? So knowing all these little simple techniques along the way, learning how to use the features can make tomorrow's problems a lot easier to solve. And it also opens up your ability to do things in your videos that are more than just, if you're a talking head kind of person like me and you tend to, talk into the camera and explain things, you can do more with it. You can add more things. You can create a better experience for the YouTube viewer. You got to remember that when I make content here, I'm really trying to focus on making better video content, uploading it to YouTube, and then trying to figure out how to get people to actually watch it and connect with them, right? Grow those channels. So all of these little things can help make your content a little bit better as you move forward, if you know these different techniques and can implement them to improve the experience. Let me look at some of the. Oh my gosh, we're having real issues right now in my area. I apologize for the internet. I don't know what's going on, but Comcast seems to be having brownouts. I'll try to stay in as long as I can. Yeah, if you have questions, drop them in here with a queue, and I will see if I can answer some of those questions as they go. Let's see. I'm scrolling a bit. I'm trying to catch up with the previous chat. Let's see. Hang on tight. Questions. Let me show you. I want to show you one of the other features that you may be familiar with from Filmora. Let me pull this back up. Let's see. Let me share a screen and come back. There we go. So in the original version of Filmora, and it's still here, if you wanted to add a mask to your track, with that newer feature was the one where I just clicked, and then up in the mask area, I could add masks here. That's the newer version. But there was another way to do it too, where you could take, let me start with another piece of content because I've already put some stuff on this one. Let me grab a different sample video and put that in a track above. And on this one, what you could do is you could go up to the effects tab. Can you see at the very top, it says effects? If you click on the effects tab, there's actually masks right here. You can see it right here. It says image mask and shape mask. If you grab the mask and drag it down onto that track, it also does the similar thing of adding a mask onto that piece of footage. Let me shut off everything underneath it so you can see what's happening. But there's no control. If I click up in this window, the only thing that's being activated is the entire piece of footage. So if I start trying to move it, you see how it moved the whole footage, not, the mask and the footage? That got kind of funky, and that's the difference of the new option. And if you click on this and you go up to the effects, you'll see here that drop down, there's been an image mask added to the track. And this is where it has more shapes. So you'll see different types of shapes here that you can use. Not all of these shapes are available in the new masking feature, but this was the old way that you had to do it. You had to pick a mask shape. You could do clouds. You could do like a, whatever this spiky explosion thing is. And then you'd have to use like the X and the Y to move it back, left and right, up and down. X being left and right, up and down, Y being up and down. And then there was a width. You could make it wider or smaller, and then you could change the height. But there was so much manual adjustment with that it would get super freaky, and it took forever to kind of get the thing to do what you want. So this newer feature here, having the ability to, let me turn off the top track and let's go with the second track. Having the ability to have this mask option in the upper left. They still have the old one. It's still there. You can still use it. Makes it a little bit easier to apply a mask that you need onto your footage really simply. And you can see in the upper right how it's, when I click on that, I can actually control that mask. Now, one other thing you want to think about here is they've added a few options in this upper left. Let me see if I can show those to you. If you look in the upper left, right above me, they also have some things that they didn't have in some of the earlier versions. And if you look right off the top, they still have the ability, you can rotate it. That's that little knob, so you can twist the mask one way or another. Scale is just the size of it. So if you expand the scale, it gets bigger. If you shrink the scale, it gets smaller. But they have blur strength now. This is a fun one that they didn't have good control of blur strength. Blur strength is another word for feathering, meaning the edge. Do you want a really crisp edge, or do you want to kind of blur it out? If you look, watch that in the upper right. See how it went from super crisp circle to, if I open up the blur strength, Now it starts to get kind of hazy, so you can do like a slow feathered into the background. So if you turn the background on, you'll see now it's not that crisp edge. It kind of feathers its way out, so it blends the edges into whatever's happening underneath, which is a nice feature to have right here. Nice and simple. You can blur that. They do have the width and the height. One other thing you really want to pay attention to too, if you look at the very bottom, see this box I'm pointing at right here? Invert mask. When we talk about inverting a mask, remember what we're saying here is we're creating a circle and we're saying this portion of this footage is what's important, and let's erase everything out and make it transparent so you can see through it and see what other tracks are underneath it or behind it. But you can invert the mask, and if you click invert, it does the opposite. Now everything that you've masked gets erased and everything else in the frame goes away. That's kind of a longer way to do something like if I said, well, I want to put something over this guy's face and make it follow him. You know, we've done this before with motion tracking, where you can click motion tracking and put something over and have it follow it. But you could also do the same thing here. There's always more than one way to skin a cat. But all I did was I now erased his face, let something else show through. And if I play this footage, if you watch, it'll kind of feel like I'm trying to hide his identity. with a mask of cherry blossoms. Apparently that's the way you hide people's face nowadays. You gotta use cherry blossoms. So that's what that invert does. It's deciding if there's a circle or a square or a shape, do I want everything inside of that shape to stay on screen and everything else be erased, mask out the outside of the shape? Or do I want to invert it and let everything outside of the shape still show up and then erase everything inside of whatever shape I'm using? And that's the invert that of the mask feature. So you'll find there's different times that makes a lot of sense. I've done that with pieces of footage where I wanted to show how you could remove someone on a beach. I actually had a person on a beach that that I wanted to remove, and the way I did it was I just masked her. She was kind of walking on a beach a bit. I masked her out, and then I took another piece of the footage where there was sand, and I went ahead and I just replaced it with another chunk of sand, and it made her disappear. I think I can show you that. Hold on one second. You'll see what that mask is like. Erase. There we go. I think we go. I got it right here. Let me do this. I'll show you what I mean. So all this was, it's pretty self-explanatory. It was just a girl on a beach. I wanted to make her disappear. I just wanted the beach, and I did it. So let me see if I can show you that.
A lot of viewers have asked me, hey Daniel, can I remove an element from my video using Filmora 9? You can remove entire people from your video. Now, to be fair to the ladies, you can remove men too. Stick around, I'll show you how. She seems way too happy about that. Hit the subscribe.
She was very happy. So that was a similar thing as where I was masking things out. If you have a piece of footage and where you want to just remove an element, you just have to make sure you have something to replace it with. So if you mask it out, in that case of where I removed the guy, there was a moment he was in scene and he walked away. And all I did was, once he had walked out of the scene, I took that piece of footage of her being excited and laid it in and just overlaid it. So I erased him and then masked out. So all you could see was the footage when I erased. And it seemed like he had actually walked out of scene, but I had erased that part. He went from being in scene to not being in scene just by masking him out. So as long as there's something underneath showing through, then you have complete control over whatever you want to do. You're going to find this masking technique important for different things you do, because there's a lot of kinds of questions about, well, how, when would I use this or how would I use this? But the idea here is, she was exceptionally happy. See ya. So the idea here is you want to think about the problems you may be in, the problems you may walk into. I use examples of that, like removing the sky from a scene. That was one where I wanted to mask out the sky. In another scenario, I wanted to erase the guy, so I erased it. If you're doing talking to yourself, a cloning effect, you want to be able to mask half of that shot out and bring in another half. There's 1,000, again, the ping pong thing where I knocked my face around. Think about situationally. Sometimes just learning how to use these masks. So when a situation does come up where you go, how will I eliminate this portion of that video? Go, well, I could probably use a mask. Just put a mask in there and get that person out of there. Let me see. Q, so did you use the line mask to do that last one? The one, yeah, I did. It's exactly what I did. So in that scenario, let me see if I can give you an example of, I wish I actually had that footage right on hand. I don't, but let me see. Let me share this and see if this will make sense for you. What I did, Jessica, was for all intents and purposes, let me delete this. Let me get this thing out of here. What I did was, let me deselect everything here. I'm using a photo editing software here just to show you the idea, just with an image. But this is the same rules apply with a video. Basically, what I did was, there was originally in this piece of footage, there was the girl was over here, right? And the guy was over here. And she was sitting on the right, and she was the girl on the right, this side. She was just, she was sitting on the bed and making the motions. He was taking stuff and he left the scene. So what I did was, once I got to the point where he left the scene, I took that identical footage and layered it over itself. And I just used the left half where I vertically put it in there so that it only showed the closet with him already out of scene, and the right half was still the girl who was acting continuously. The original shot was, you know, he packs up and he leaves, and you'd think she's really sad, but she's actually happy. So it was a continuous shot for her. And I just erased him. Instead of letting him walk off scene, I cut right to the portion where he's already gone. But it was only on that left half, right? It was only on the half that where he had already, you know, moved out of the scene. So that was nice and easy. You know, once this guy had already left, I went, no problem. I just want that left half, and I'm gonna bring it back in and layer it over and just mask it so that she's still in scene, but you're seeing the left half of the closet. So these kind of things are really straightforward techniques, but you have to understand what would be the application. In that one, I thought it would be funny if I erased him, and then instead of having him walk out, erase him, and then she's really happy about that. So just simple things like that, like, you know, where would you use that if you were a channel that was actually talking about relationships? You know, like, where would you use some masking technique? We're a relationship channel. Well, there's a perfect example. Like, if you said, like, well, you know, if this person has, you know, been erased from your life or left, you know, is no longer in a relationship with you, then you can erase the person. And like, these little things sometimes can make videos, especially when you're uploading to YouTube, just a little more interesting, or something that catches the viewer's eye or makes them chuckle for a minute. So even serious topics, sometimes you can bring a little levity to it, or just change the way that the approach is, instead of just showing a piece of footage of a guy walking away, things like that. KLC Ken, thank you for the $9.99 super chat, my friend. Would love if you had some videos like this using Final Cut Pro. I do like Filmora, but Final Cut Pro and M1 Max, so smooth. Totally agree. I have the original M1 on a Mac Mini, and I just got the new, well, not the brand new one. It's the M1 Pro. So I have the M1 Pro chip. I don't have the M1 Max because they wouldn't ship them for a million years. But you're right. That's super fast. I just started using Final Cut Pro. Do they even call it Pro anymore? It's still called Pro, but I don't think they use the X or whatever it is. But it's but I'm still working my way through it. I might do that. I use Filmora a lot. It's been my go-to, and every time I think I'm going to change permanently to another software, Filmora adds a couple more features that make me stick around a little longer, and I can still do most of my basic workflow in it. So thanks for the super chat, and don't be surprised if you see some Mac and Final Cut Pro stuff, just to show people some of the different options out there. I still think that Final Cut Pro and a Mac is the best setup for editing high resolution content at the best price. You can get Final Cut Pro for what do they pay? $299, I believe it is. And you can get a basic M1 Mac Mini for about with decent memory for about $1,000 or $1,100. So for $1,500, you can have the software and the hardware, and they run super smooth. You can do 4K edits with no lag whatsoever. They run so smooth. So yeah, I appreciate that, and I will put it on my list. Q, I know this is irrelevant, but should I switch to commentary in YouTube? For me, they have been quite successful. I'm not sure. Interesting question. It is sort of not irrelevant, just not specific. Should you switch to the commentary section in YouTube? I think you're asking, I'm making sure I understand your question. Do you mean doing commentary type content? I don't know. It depends on what your channel's about. With me, it's I talk about that a lot. When it comes to making content for YouTube, figure out what kind of conversation you want to be in, who your target audience, and then try to do the best job of making content that serves their need. That's what we're doing here, always trying to figure out how to make better content. But yeah, all right, I apologize for that. Hopefully that'll be the end of it. I'll be doing some editing for the replay. Let's see if I missed any questions in here. Q, what are your thoughts on using LumaFusion on iPad or Mac? LumaFusion's not bad. It does a trick. You know, it's an easier software. I've used a bunch of easier stuff like Lightworks. On iPad, I tend to like Lightworks. I thought they did a pretty decent Lightworks. Because it was Lightworks, it was Light Tricks by Video Leap. Video Leap. That's the one that I liked. They've changed the name. I'm trying to remember which one they're called now. I think it's Light Tricks, Video Leap. Was pretty cool. It had a lot of decent features, keyframing and all of that stuff in it. But when it comes to iPad, you're really using apps, video editing apps, which are limited. Well, I always recommend that editors who are serious about trying to make some content, make sure you're either on a laptop or a desktop of some kind. And I prefer desktop editing to laptop editing because, with the exception of the Mac, which is pretty good, it's harder for me to physically work on a laptop. And you're paying a lot more for the functionality to be condensed into a laptop. And I have tons of laptops here. I've got one. So there's one here. I've got a MacBook Pro over there. We have tons of them kicking around, and I like it. And I have like an iPad Pro here. And I like it, but the problem is you're just limited to the functionality of, they're very useful, but the apps are more limited. They don't have as much features. So if you can get to a laptop or a desktop, you're going to find that you'll just have more ability to do the things you want because the software is higher functioning. So there's more features that do the things you want them to do. I also like a bigger screen too. The bigger screen, the better for me. They get too big at a certain point, but I use two different screens. I use there's a 1080. This is about a 26-inch screen, and that's a 30. I think that's a 30-inch screen over here, 4K, and it allows me to just see a little better and get the intricacies down. Basic to Bougie Restaurant Reviews. Thank you for the $9.99 super chat. Morning, sir. Love the new feature in Filmora. Can you export segments of your project instead of having to export the whole thing? Makes bouncing super easy. Good question. As far as I know, and anyone tell me if they've learned any different, I don't think they've added that feature. It's the thing. I know exactly what you're talking about too. In other softwares, let me see if I can show you what I'm talking about in a different software. Let's try it with an audio software. In other softwares, when you have tracks and things that are stacked, what you can do is select a piece of the timeline. Let me see. Let me pull this comment out. Thank you very much for the $9.99 super chat. Let me pull this out for a second. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I will share the screen, this one and this one. Yes, that's it. Let me put that in there. Okay, so this is a audio software. This is Reaper. It's how I do my audio when you guys have seen me use it in cinematic stuff when I'm really trying to get high-end audio. This is a digital audio workstation. And it's not too dissimilar than like Filmora, right? You have your tracks and then whatever's in each piece. But it's just all audio. Everything in there is audio. Now in here, if I wanted to just take a section and export it in the timeline up above, I would just click and drag, and everything that's highlighted, when I would go to export, I could just say, okay, they call it render, and I could choose, I only want to render the time selection. That's what it says here, though it's a little hard to see, but time selection. Okay, and I go, and then when I export, it just exports everywhere I've highlighted, and it's simple to drag that left and right. I wish Filmora would add that. Just a thing in the timeline that you could go, I want to drag and go, just this portion, export that. They haven't yet. But as far as I know, please correct me if anyone else has found that feature. I'm hoping they do that soon, sooner than later. But typically what I end up doing, if there's a piece of it that I need to export, what I'll do, let me show you. Let me see if I can have this make sense without being too confusing. I'm hoping, Lord knows sometimes I can make things confusing. If there is, let me share this screen up here. if there's a section in your timeline that you want to export, let me bring down a bunch of stuff. This is the simplest way to do it. Let me bring this in here. I'll put like another track there. Let me just stick a bunch of things in the timeline so that it looks like a regular timeline where you're like, oh yeah, I've got stuff everywhere. And, but I don't want to export the whole thing. I just want to export a piece of it. Let me throw a bunch of junk around here. Okay. Let's say you only wanted to export from like here to look at that top track, that to that, right? What you can do is, first of all, save your project. Save it as. Let's say we're going to save this project on desktop as my important project. Okay. Now, everything in this project is saved. It's now saved. You've held on to it. That means you can always come back to it in a minute. Now, what you can do is you can box. And you can say, well, I don't want this beginning stuff, so I'm going to click inside of the... let's see if they let me do it. Click inside of the timeline. I'm going to box this stuff out, right? The stuff that I don't want. Hold on. It selects it, and you can hit, as long as the auto, you can hit delete, and then you can go, I don't want this stuff over here too, and you can go delete, and it's only going to do that section. Now, it did just eliminate the other stuff. If you wanted everything in between that, you'd have to slice, so you don't see where I'm putting the playhead, and I'm hitting B on my, you can do it here too, and just slice everything. Then you can go, okay, I'm going to make a box that'll select everything on the left. Let's delete it. Let me select everything on the right. Let's delete that. Let's make sure that we ripple delete to make sure everything goes back to the beginning. And now you just have this. Now you could export this, right? Say, I just wanted that section, and you export it. And you go, yeah, but you just ruined your project, Daniel. Well, no, I just wanted that one thing that I need it as an export. I can go back, and I can, on the upper left, I can go open recent, and I can open up my important project. It's asking me here, do you want to save what you just did? If I needed to save this, because I may want to export it again, then I could save it. But I could say, nope, I just wanted the original, my important project. And it brings me right back to the entire project. So what I'm doing is a hack workaround where I save the entire project with everything in it. Then I just quickly, selected and deleted the stuff I didn't, exported what I wanted, and went back to my original project. It's not as fast as if there were a true timeline selector, but that's what I've been doing so far. Let me know if anyone finds out that they've done, wait a minute, Filmora allows you, maybe it does. Filmora allows you to export selected clips. Someone tell me where that is. Shout that out, Billy Boy. I haven't seen that feature in terms of exporting, but they've been adding a bunch of new ones. So if you know that you can do regions, shout out where that is so we can share it with the group. Because I've always just deleted the stuff that I didn't need. I haven't found, they've always had the ability to import selected regions. You can take your footage, whatever you've brought in, and then use your bars to choose what you're bringing into your timeline instead of bringing an entire piece of clip, but exporting the complete thing. Meant to say that you could do that in the newest updated notes. I haven't updated though. Yeah, I'll have to see what it is. Because so far I'd love to see if they've just added it. That's why I said they change so much. I want to make sure that that's let me see what this one is. Yes, it's a new feature. Look at the export tab for the latest Filmora update. Okay, this is the latest one. Let's local name, save to, preset, resolution, frame rate, auto, under, auto highlight. Got you. Okay, so can you do a custom? Let's find out. They've finally done it. I still wish they would make it simpler. So you can do an auto highlight. Let's see if I can figure it out. 60 seconds, custom. Wait a minute. But it only lets you do how much? I don't have a start and an end point. Let me say I go up to, whatever. Let me go up to the, what is it, minutes? Let me go up to the hours, minutes, and seconds. Let's go 30 seconds. That's it. So it only allows me, let me go full screen so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so it still doesn't seem to solve the problem unless someone knows something else that I don't know. It'll let you choose an auto highlight. Let me read what it says. Click the box to generate an additional highlight video. Auto highlight. Maybe someone else. I'm reading in case someone else knows the export tab. Yeah, it just says auto highlight. It looks like it's only going to allow me to my important project. Let me export that. Let me see what it gives me back in. Yeah, it looks like it's just choosing the first 12 seconds. My important project highlight. And what did it give me? Let's play that. Sure. Gee, you know, it sure didn't seem like it auto-highlighted that. It sure looks like it gave me the whole thing. You know, imagine that. YouTube feature, Filmora features that don't work. Stop it. Yeah, it's boy, the highlight doesn't seem to be any different than the other projects, so I'm not seeing it. It was based on the time frame. I'll do some more investigation with that. I'm hoping that they make these features better. Because they just keep wrestling with it. I'm sure from what I'm seeing here anyway, it looks like that the best it'll allow you to do is either auto 15 seconds, the first 15 seconds, the first 60 seconds, or a custom amount. This will make for great how to deal with technical issues. I've never had it this bad, usually because I pay it's stupid, like $300 a month for high-speed internet. But this has just been horrible today. I appreciate you guys hanging around. So let's see. Yeah, Megan will be calling Comcast today. And by calling very politely, I let her make those calls because I just like to lose my mind with people and go, you kidding me? She's the delicate one. Let me see. And see if I missed any questions here in chat. Might be YouTube itself. No, it's definitely, I'm watching my modem actually shut down and restart. It means the signal they're sending to my house it's rebooting the modem. So there's some issue they're having. Exactly. That's how I feel. That's how I feel today. Every now and then it happens. This is the joy of live streaming, is sometimes you have so many technical things going on. You guys know, I've got a million pieces of this puzzle spread across everywhere. All it takes is one of those things to not work. Internet is an important one. If my microphone acts funny, I can change it quickly. Trying to get another internet is tricky. Quick question here. It's have you used Filmora on Mac yet? I have an M1 MacBook. I'm curious if it performs well. I actually did a video on that. If you go on my channel, Mac or PC, I did try using it on an M1 and it ran pretty well. Though the thing you have to understand about Filmora on a Mac is it's not built natively on Apple architecture. So it's using the Rosetta wrapper. That's too technical for you. So that the OS can understand and use the software. So it's being interpreted to a certain degree. They put a wrapper on it so it can work. I did use it. It worked pretty well. I was surprised that it went fairly smoothly because the M1, especially the M1 Max, is just a really fast processor. But if you've got an M1 Max, you probably should look into Final Cut Pro. Those two together are insanely, because you got the same company that made the software is making the hardware, and they make their own processors now. So it just screams through footage. So if you've got the M1 Max, think about learning Final Cut Pro. I love Final Cut Pro because it's sort of halfway between Filmora and Adobe Premiere Pro. It's got a ton of features, but it's very user-friendly. The interface is very user-friendly. It doesn't have as many features as Adobe Premiere Pro, but it definitely flies. And I also like DaVinci Resolve, but DaVinci Resolve has a steeper learning curve too. I like software that's easy. Show me what the thing is and let me get going. Where were we trying to figure out the export? So the last thing we heard from the export tab, trying to see if we could export a certain portion of your video in Filmora. It looks like you can start from the beginning and then choose a certain amount of seconds to highlight. And even when I did that, it didn't seem to do it properly. So I'll learn a little bit more about that, but it's still, from what I've seen so far, Filmora still lacks the ability to go into a project and say, I want to just export from the 2-minute mark to the 3-minute 20-second mark. As far as I know, that does not exist, but I'm hoping that I might be wrong. To export portions of a project, click the export tabs, click next to the view. Let me see. Click on the export tab, next to the view and help tabs. Yeah, I know with the export tabs. Oh, export tab. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Hold on. Maybe we're learning something. Let me follow Billy Boy here. Let me follow him down the rabbit hole. I'm with you, Billy. Let me see what we got. Hold on. Okay, so export tab. Let's say, was it, and then what did he ask? Next to the right, and then the top of the screen, then click export selected clips. So I'd have to select first, because it doesn't say export selected clips, so I have to select something. So I could say, let's see if I go here. Okay, hold on. Here, let me do an independent selection, and let me do export selected clips. Now will let me do it? Let's see what happens. My important project clips. Let's see what happens. Boom. So it's exporting now, and let's quickly see. Let's open that folder and let's have that play. And yeah, let's play it with media player. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I didn't even do that either. See, here's the problem. I just selected, here's, again, I mean, I love Filmora, but I selected this clip, that clip, that clip, and that clip. And this right here started sooner, and it chose to only do that clip. And the problem, again, Billy Boy, is you're choosing clips, not time frames. The real question that people keep asking is, Daniel, I want to export from this minute mark to this minute mark in my project, which virtually every other software does. And Filmora wrestles with it, and they keep trying to come up with, you know, I just tried to export those clips, and it didn't start at the right spot. I should have seen the beginning because of how I had selected clips. I should have seen the beginning of this one start first. It should have started here and then gone to that one, and it didn't. So whatever. I think Filmora tries. You know, in the future, hopefully they'll get to that. They do listen. One of the things is in the help tab of Filmora, if there are features that you want, if you click on help and then you there's what do they call it? I got to look what they call it. I always forget. It's like a feature requests, new feature request right here. It brings you to the site and you can ask for stuff. And if enough people ask, they do use that to make decisions on what to make next. So if it's important to enough people, you know, you explain it right. I'd like to be able to you know, export, you know, a certain section of my timeline from 1 minute point set the start point into another end point that I can set. It's one of those things that if enough people ask, they actually do it, or they think about it because they've been pretty good about keeping the software updated. But Billy Boy, unfortunately, we still don't have the feature. It doesn't have the feature that we're talking about, which is really saying, hey, I want to go from the 2 minute mark to the 3.5 minute mark. But maybe hopefully we'll see it. Maybe it'll improve. Now you can export only selected clips. They said in 10.5 you can export segments. Yeah, I'm not seeing the segments. If anyone finds it, leave it in the comments section of this live stream. I'm always looking for it, and I have yet to find anything that does it. I think they try, but maybe soon. Let me just look at the chat again. I missed so much chat as I was beating up Comcast that I don't know if I missed any questions. Let's see. Who's the man? Answer Daniel Batal. Thank you, Billy. I appreciate it. I appreciate you pointing me in the right direction because I wouldn't have. I've never exported individual clips like that. But that is good to know if there's just something in your video where your feature would work, Billy. Let's say you had one section of a timeline. Let me see where Billy's tip could be super helpful would be. Let's say you had a piece of footage. Hold on a second. Let me do all of this. Let me select all those and I'll deselect this one. Let me delete all that. If you had one piece of footage, let's say this was a half hour long. Sorry, Billy, I have to pull your comment out of here. If this was like a half hour long, you could go, oh, okay, I got to here. And from right here on, I just wanted to start there. If it was one piece of footage, you could split that footage and go, okay, and then I want to go to the, 4 minutes later. This is not 4 minutes long. 4 minutes later, I want to do that. That's the section there. I just want to export that part of my singular piece of footage in my timeline. Then you could, if you highlight that, because I've selected it, you could then go up to export selected clips, and then it would only be sending out that one clip section there. So that could be useful, Billy. That's a good tip. It could be useful if you only had one piece of footage in your timeline. But for me, I always got like layers of text and effects added and color grading and it's sound underneath. So I really want to be able to go, like I showed you in the audio software, I just want to go start here, go to here, and export everything in the project between those two time points. Maybe someday. Let's see. This stream is such a mess today. Listen, if you have any other questions, put them down in the comments section of this chat. I hope the little bit that we did get through was helpful. I'll re-edit this and pull the gaps out when it goes up for replay, so that at least you could follow it through and maybe hopefully be a little more linear. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. It means a lot. And as always, feel free to drop questions in any video. If you have a question about something, doesn't matter if it relates to the video you're on, just drop it right in the comments section, because I always watch all my comments as a whole and I reply to them. So you got a question, never be afraid to drop it. I hope you guys have a really great day. I hope some of this was useful. I'm going to go kick the crap out of Comcast, and I'll see you next time.